All right, how you doing? Welcome back for another episode of the Bay Ragni Show. Happy Wednesday to you and yours. I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Rik Fox. We're back for part two of this amazing interview where we're going through the illustrious career of Mr. Rik Fox, and he's got a hell of a career to talk about. Lots of bands, lots of fun times, lots of interesting times, lots of crazy, wacky times throughout this world of music that covers not only his New York life in the early days, but now we're into the world of L.A., Hollywood, Sunset Strip. When we last talked, we had just talked about the whole world of W.A.S.P, and we were getting ready to dive into the world of Steeler and beyond. But before we get into that, Rik, how have you been, man? It's actually been, I guess, about a month since the last time. It's pretty crazy.
Has it been?
Yeah, it's been about a month.
Well, thanks for having me on again, Bay. And you're overly flattering. I don't know if my career would be considered illustrious, but there has been a few bright moments here and there.
Hey, you know what? Some people don't even get those bright moments. So
that's true.
So let's pick up where we left off, and where we left off is something that still to this day, people in the world, music fans of the heavy metal world, you always still see this album cover shared throughout the world of social media now, especially. You go to these rock conventions or record stores, you always see that infamous album cover of Steeler, and now I see it constantly still shared out. People always still talk about that album. It's truly an album from the very early onset of early 80s metal that really kind of opened the floodgates. So
there it is behind me.
There it is. Now, how did that whole thing come to be? Like, how did you hook up with Ron? How did Yngwie come into the mix? A very young Yngwie?
Well, my first exposure to Steeler was in 1982, after I was out of W.A.S.P. I was at the Roxy on Sunset with Eric Carr from Kiss. He was the drummer from Kiss. He was a friend of mine.
Okay.
And that was the original Steeler lineup out of Nashville. And they were a self-contained unit. Some bands who, like Sweet Savage, would do this. They have a touring circuit, a club touring circuit, and they would have their own truck, their own lights, their own rigging, PA, the whole schmear. They can go anywhere from club to club and set it up and do it their way. And that's kind of what Steeler did. And they had all their own stuff, and they were loud and proud and in your face. They were good musicians. Everybody played their part musically. But the one thing that stood out that Eric and I were remarking on is how much of a rock star Ron Keel came off like on stage. Like, this guy commands the stage. He commands the audience. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
And so we were taking note of that. And the screams that Ron was doing were like we were covering our ears, not just because of the sheer volume, but you can hear Ron over all of the music and everything, or the volume out of the PA with Ron's screams and his the high pitched screams he was doing, and I'm like, well, this guy's going to go somewhere, And then at some point, I had put an ad in a local Los Angeles magazine called Music Connection magazine.
Okay.
And they covered the whole scene and what was going on in the music industry and whatnot. And they had a classified section, in the back of the magazine, for people looking to network and, join bands or look for musicians or looking for gear, things like that, or selling gear. And I took a chance and I put an ad in, saying that I was new in town. I was relatively new from New York. I had affiliations with Kiss and with Thor and this, that. I said it recently just was with W.A.S.P. And, was looking for a gig. And I got contacted by Ron. Of all people, and he says, we got on the phone and he said, hey man, your ad looked really pro, man, and I like what it said, and I'd like to hook up with you. I'd like to talk to you and meet with you, and we'll see what happens. And I went,
you must sound like Ron there.
It helps. That's the selling point. it's like doing stand up. You have to kind of really, when you're trying to do like Christopher Walken, and you try to, I don't know, get like him, and you copy the guy. Anyway, so Ron gave me the address. And I got a ride over to it, and it was in a not quite south central LA, but if you kind of get my drift there, they were in a walking distance right around the corner from the original Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. That'll give you an indication of the kind of neighborhood they were in. And it was 3 gutted storefronts. I mean, they had the supporting walls, but it was like one storefront, another main storefront, and another storefront. And it was a bit of a shock walking in there because it was like very Spartan. There was just bare essentials. Ron had his bed in a corner, covered with a curtain, and it was just like a mattress on some milk crates. And I went, boy, I know what that feels like. That's like what I did when I was staying at Blackie's house. Only I didn't have the milk crates. The mattress was just kind of on the floor in the box spring. There was another bed across the room by the bathroom on a bunch built up on milk crates. That was Mark Edwards' sleeping area.
Okay.
And then they were off as you go in off to your left. There was another room of the storefront area, and it had some debris or things stacked up in there. And there was a huge, massive water bed. And that's where the kitchen area was, where all the roaches were. See, there's the inside joke that was called the Steeler Mansion, which is it's ironic because it was anything but. Because when it's the lights are out in the dark at night, if you go into that kitchen and you go to turn the stove on, before the pilot lights, the gas goes through the burners, and you can hear tips and taps and little sounds on the floor on the newspaper. It's the roaches jumping off the stove and bailing from the gas odor, because the roaches were in the stove as well. So that's why they called it the Steeler Mansion. So anyway, and then if you go to the next storefront on your right was the rehearsal room, and rehearsal room / little stand-up shower in the corner, and then it was like a little side room, which eventually became what was my bedroom. Like that, and you had like a glass between you and the street. That was it. The glasses were all the storefront. The glass was all like waxed out, so you couldn't see through it or paint like that. So that was it. And when it rained, the rain would soak through the concrete under the window and start to come in on the floor. So it was certainly not rock stardom. I'll tell you that. Excuse me. So anyway, I go in. I meet with Ron. I walk into the rehearsal room with him, and it's just a riser, just the drum riser. That's it. No, nothing. And I said, "Well, wow, where's everything?" And Ron says, "I fired the band, man. Everybody's gone. It's just me and Mark. And Mark's not here right now. He's in Texas. He's visiting his relatives. So I need to meet you, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk." And I went, "All right, fine." And he said, so we shot the shit a little bit, and talked about my affiliation with Kiss, because Ron's a huge Kiss fan.
Yeah.
So I told him about how I met dated Peter Chris's sister, and that's how I met Peter. And then that wound up me going up to the loft and watching Kiss rehearse before Ace Frehley was in the band and like that, and so on. So we got to be one of the first people to see Kiss, the nucleus, be born of that. And Ron was like really, like a kid in a toy store. He loved hearing that. So. Anyway, so we got down to business, and he said, so listen, I fired the whole band. Everybody's gone, like I said, except me and Mark. And I here's the thing, okay? We did showcases for every major label, and they didn't like what they were seeing. And at this point, Steel is like up and coming, one of the biggest cornerstone bands of the LA rock scene, with Rat, Motley Crue, Black and Blue, like that. So he says, we can't compete. The guys I brought out with me from Nashville, they're great players, but we can't compete with I guess the showmanship aspect of what we're up against with the LA bands.
Right.
So he says, I need a band that looks like rock stars. I need a band that looks like guys who are already there, who already made it. and your name was passed around, your name came up several times. They said, "Hey, you got to see this guy, Rik Fox. He's a bass player from out of town, and he's got this head of hair. It looks like a rock star. It looks like Punky Meadows from Angel." And like that. So, Roz, and you do. You look like a rock star, and that's what I need. I want to see what happens here. So, essentially, he gave me a cassette tape of the songs. He says, "Take this tape, learn the songs, no promises. All right, we'll take it from there when you come back." I went, "All right, fine." Now, material wasn't rocket science. Obviously, it wasn't Rush.
Right.
It wasn't Queensryche. It wasn't intricate. It was straight ahead, in your face, hard metal, rock and roll, catchy chords, cliche titles, which is the stuff that people remember at the end of the night when they go home. They're going to go on and buy that record because they remember those songs. So, nobody goes out and buys an album because they remember the guitar solo, except maybe, well, in the case of Van Halen with Eruption. Okay, that's the exception to the rule. But beyond, and that went right into "You Really Got Me," so people remember that song. Anyway, so I took the tape back to where I was staying, and I went over the stuff. I learned it. And then a couple of days later, whatever, when Ron had time, I contacted him. I said, "All right, I'm ready to come over." And we sat down one-on-one. He sat across from me, and he had I think he had an amp for him and his guitar.
Okay.
I don't remember what I played through. I might have had a little pig nose amp or something like that. And we just went over the songs, and to his satisfaction, obviously, it worked. We did that, I think, once or twice, 3 times, and he says, "Well, when Mark comes back from Dallas, we're gonna sit down and play it 3-piece and see how that sounds." I said, "Okay." And it's like you said, you took a huge leap of faith at the junction he was at, being at the risen point already. I mean, Steele was already on Metal Massacre with Brian Slagle's album Metal Massacre, with a compilation of all these LA bands that were on.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Metallica. Well, Metallica was replaced. The next pressing, the album had Cold Day, and the original version of Cold Day in Hell on it. And then second pressing, I think that was taken off, and they put Metallica on. So that makes it a collector's item, actually. But so Steele was a force at that point to be reckoned with. Where it went from there was going, for outer space. It's now it's going to become the Elon Musk version of rock and roll at that point. So Mark came back from Texas. I don't know what the time frame was, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And Ron asked me if I could go pick him up from the airport. So, okay. And I borrowed a car, and I drove down to John Wayne Airport in Orange County and picked him up. And it wasn't like, "Hey, how you doing?" It was like, "Oh, so you're the new guy, huh?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm the new guy." I said, it wasn't overly friendly. Mark was kind of a really quiet guy to begin with. He's very humble, very, very not fully engaging, I guess, unless he really, really knew you. So it was just kind of a little bit of a distance, a little bit of a wall there, because, why volunteer being overly friendly to a guy that might not work out and that it might feel bad? That's a whole thing in
right.
Sure. People are like that. They don't want to extend or overextend being friendly in case the whatever it is you're working on doesn't work out, whatever. So it was the drive back to the studio and like that. And he got, I forget how eventually he got his drums out of storage. I think that's what they were. And set up the drums. And we set up a time to try and rehearse, just Ron and Mark and myself.
Okay.
And that's pretty much how it started, like that. Wow. And Mark's from the Tommy Aldridge school of drumming.
Okay.
Kind of looked like a younger version of Tommy, really handsome version of Tommy, with the mounds of dark, blondish curly hair and the stick twirling and the body language behind the drums, all of that. And Mark was the first member to replace Bobby Eva, the original drummer in Steeler.
Okay.
So they had still had Tim Morrison on bass and Mike Dunnigan on guitar, when Mark came in and replaced. So that all started to really, I guess, up the game and drive the rhythm section a lot, more effectively. And then the original players in Steel were really good musicians. Mark Dunnigan is a good guitar player, and Tim Morrison was a great bass player. But I guess what Ron was looking for, I don't know how to put this. I guess they couldn't meld into that kind of imagery,
right?
To stand at a spot on stage and own that spot. The Kiss School, it was Stars, Angel, the bands that that we grew up loving. I came from an era in the '70s where you looked up on stage and looked at the bands, and they were like gods.
Yeah, exactly.
It was definitely, well, except for the Southern rock bands, but that's what they call it, show business, as opposed to show business.
Right.
Okay, so you have show business, which is running it, but then you have show business, which is what's going on stage. A lot of people don't make that connection. And some guys or musicians are afraid to be that way on stage. They think it's precocious, pretentious, and fake, or I don't want to look like, I don't want to do that, But that's what people remember is this show when they go home, I mean, and
exactly.
in the 60s, everybody was smoking pot, and so sometimes it didn't matter what you looked like. You just got into the music. But, like when Kiss came out, they said they wanted to be on stage a conglomeration of all the bands they grew up watching that were influencing them. Humble Pie, The Who, all this bam, bam, bam impact on stage. So Steeler was kind of going into that same route, I believe. Sure. If I'm not mistaken, Ron would agree that he wanted this band to look like gods on stage.
Yeah,
we got on stage and we owned it, and much more so than the first lineup. So we rehearsed like that, and we got tight, real tight. And then Mark was the first drummer to actually take me aside and say, listen, there's a thing about the rhythm section. You got to listen. Okay. There's the drummer, there's the bass player. It's like gears in a wheel. Let me get the camera there. You got to kind of go like this. The gears of the teeth all have to meet.
Right.
Or it doesn't work. Now, I had come from playing 6 nights a week, 4 or 5 sets a night in Jersey, from the Jersey band, like with the E. Walker band. So I don't know. That didn't occur to me. I mean, I clicked with the drummer we were playing with.
Sure.
But we never had that conversation about where the meter is, because we were playing cover songs. We were playing Zeppelin and the Doors and the Who and new wave stuff and Ramones. So it didn't really dawn on me to think about, okay, well, I mean, you're playing songs that they're copy songs, so where the meter is. But now we're playing original material. And for me, I'm still copying someone else's material, but it's original. So Mark said, here's the beat. Then you have ahead of the beat. You have behind the beat. You lay back a little. He taught me essentially to listen to what the drummer is saying while he's playing. And you listen to the drummer's language and the kick. You listen for that kick, and that's telling you everything you need to know.
Wow.
So I learned to really pay attention more and lock in with what Mark was doing on the drums. And that's really made the difference of making us tighter. That's what my hallmark point of that threshold of actually listening to what a drummer says. Because I never really paid attention to what the drummer was saying. I was playing my part. So that really helped, put a fine nail into the line there. Or I don't know what you want to call it, but it really made a difference in tightening up the songs. You could kind of notice that. So Mark and I, what we would do is there was a common room when you first walk into the where we lived, a round table, some chairs.
Now, had you moved into the Steeler mansion at this point? So it was pretty quick.
I had to, yeah. Well, once they said, okay, this is we want to keep rehearsing with you. They didn't say you have the gig, but I guess I was the most promising thing that they had on the table at the time. Right. I don't know if they tried anyone else out or not, but I eventually moved in, and outside the rehearsal room was this, I don't know, 33 gallon, 40 something gallon clear plastic bag. Looked like it was full of popcorn. Those are earplugs. Those yellow foam earplugs. It was
Yeah.
like the industrial bag version. And you reach in the bag, grab a couple of earplugs, put them in, and walk into the rehearsal room like that. and Mark and I would rehearse for an hour or two, just bass and drums, bass, and that's it, just bass and drum. Then we take a break, go out in the common room. Like I said, nobody was living high in a hog here. I mean, the road crew stayed with the band, Jimmy and Alan and Peter. I was learning creative ways of eating top ramen because of it's like how the military with the MREs, they invent creative ways of blending certain aspects of the MRE meals to make them a little bit different. So that's kind of what Jimmy did, was showing me with top ramen. So we'd have something to eat. And we take a break, and then we go back in and rehearse with Ron. Okay, now we have guitars, with at least Ron's guitar parts and the vocals, and that's how we rehearsed until such point as they felt like it would be time to start bringing a guitar player in, looking for a lead guitar player. So this all took place around late summer or fall of 1982.
Wow.
We went to the Rainbow on my birthday, December 28th, 1982. 7 months after I was out of W.A.S.P, Ronald turns to me and says, "Hey, man, you got the gig. Welcome to Steeler." It's like, wow. So that was when it was official.
Ron took that long for it to be official. Wow.
Yeah. Well, Ron's a real careful guy. He measures every step. He's like a strategist, military strategist.
Mm-hmm.
He measures every step. He sees where the chess pieces are. He knows where I got to move here. I got to move here. I got to do this. I got to do this. I mean, he is like literally the hardest working guy in rock and roll show business, bar none. I mean, this guy
Great
is like
guy.
very busy.
Well, before the whole thing happened, though, like where you put the ad in looking for a band, and the situation happened with W.A.S.P. Did you think at all at any point, I'm going back to New York? Or did you even think, like, if I didn't find, a situation like Steeler, I'm going back to New York? Or at that point, did you think, like, I'm just going to stay here and make what I can make happen here?
Yeah. Upon the exit strategy of W.A.S.P, one of the things Blackie said was, look, we can fly you back to New York and you can go back to where you were, or you could stay here. He goes, I would suggest, if you want to try and make it, stay here in Los Angeles, because this is the scene it's blossoming. It's if there's any place you're going to try and make it, it's out here.
Right.
So I would suggest, my advice would be to stay in Los Angeles if I were you. And that's what I did, and the interim between W.A.S.P and Steeler was not idle by any stretch.
Right.
I was like a stranger in a strange land, in the land of granola, fruits, nuts, and flakes. Belle Piper, Randy's ex-wife, told me, don't trust anyone. It's like believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. And everybody's out, like Kevin DeBro said. Anybody will get an opportunity to, they will stab you in the back. So these are the things that are rolling around in my head. I got to try and find myself, get a gig, and not trust anyone in the process. Because that's the entertainment industry is like that. There's always somebody behind you waiting for your shot to get you out of the way to take your shot. Like that. That's how the business is. It's very competitive, dog eat dog. Screw you, I want your gig, kind of a thing. And Rat was a good example of that. That was like the quintessential revolving door band, because every month there was another guy in the band replaced.
Wow.
You had before Warren DeMartini was in it, you had Mark Tureen played guitar with Rat. Jakey Lee played guitar with Rat.
Right.
They had several bass players. They had several drummers. Kurt Meyer was in it, then he was out. And then, then Blotzer was in. And so this is, I'm watching all of this go on. So I'm trying to network with whoever I can network with to try and play with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Didn't have to be a top band, but somebody I can get out and play with, because eventually,
Right.
if you're good, people will notice that and they'll start knocking on your door.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that saying, nobody wants you until somebody wants you. Nobody wants you until somebody already has you.
Mm-hmm.
That's your calling card, like that, your sandwich board, whatever you want to
Yep.
call it. That's an old phrase from the 30s and 40s, but showing my age. I where I was living was around the corner. For anybody in Los Angeles, I was living around the corner from the legendary Cantor's Deli. This is some
Okay.
Jewish deli, and we would have rock and roll barbecues out on the sidewalk in front of the apartment where I was living.
Hmm.
And the guys from Rat would show up, and this band and that band, and hot dogs, hamburgers, whatever. And here's me trying to get the thing going, and it wasn't going. It wasn't burning fast enough. So I dumped half a can of fluid on this thing. I lit a match, and it was like a thermonuclear mushroom cloud. This gasoline bomb went off, and everybody backed up. Like, wow, this guy's nuts, But one thing led to another, and yada yada yada. So I said, I'm looking for a gig. This is what happened. I was with W.A.S.P. Blah blah blah, and they're like, oh yeah, well, watch out for Blocky, blah blah blah, like that. So anyway, I can't make a long story short. It's too late. There's just too much of this. I auditioned for Rat in Stephen Piercy's grandmother's garage in Culver City. I still have the cassette that he gave me of the songs, but there's no lyrics on them. Nobody's singing. It's just all instrumental versions of their songs, like that.
Huh.
And I auditioned. I didn't get the gig, obviously. Blotzer likes bass players to play with their fingers. And I guess that's his prerogative. I said, look, I don't tell you how to play with your sticks. You don't have to tell me how to play. I play with my fingers, but I play more with a pick. This is a bone of contention with a lot of people. It's a really stupid argument, Anyway, I auditioned for the Greg Leon Invasion. Now,
Okay.
Greg was one of the original guitarists in Dokken. And he had a 3-piece band, I think, going on at the time. I got right out to Pasadena where he was rehearsing. Loud. I mean, this guy's like Marshall Stacks, loud, on full, on 11. And I remember the drummer because I used him later on in my first lineup of Sin. But I didn't get that gig. Like I said, I didn't catch on the songs fast enough. I don't know. And then I got introduced to a band playing European-style metal, a band called Warlord. They were rehearsing in North Hollywood, or at Lancashire and Magnolia, above a theater, and a loft up there. And I didn't have that much experience at that point playing predominantly minor key scale stuff. I mean, aside from the occasional Black Sabbath song, these guys were like a really dark version of Dio meets Sabbath. Okay, so a lot of the material was all minor keys, really dark sounding. The guitar player looked a little and played a lot like Blackmore. That got me really interested. The drummer, Mark Zonder, was a really good drummer. These guys knew their shit, and so I jammed with them, and they liked me, so they kept me coming back, and I was playing with these guys. The guitar player was Bill Samis, I think his name was. He's from Greece, and so we rehearsed for 4 months.
Wow.
And it was a challenge for me to play this stuff, but what the hell? It's like learning Rush. I rose to the challenge and to the occasion, and I'm playing with these guys. Now, look, if you don't like my playing from the get-go, then it behooves you to say thanks, but no thanks. It's not working out. We'll keep looking. And I'd go my way, and they go theirs.
Mm-hmm.
But I played with the guys for 4 months, so apparently I must have had something they liked. Or just you got to do rehearse with a guy for 4 months and hold on to him until somebody else better comes. Well, that's California, Los Angeles. But I played with them for 4 months. I got the material down. Most of the songs you'll hear on their first EP was the stuff I was playing with them. And they would go by character names. Like the drummer was Thunderchild and the guitar player was, I forget what his character name. But these guys spoke in first person or second person to each other, even rehearsing in the rehearsal area. They didn't refer to each other as Bill and Mark. They rehearsed it. They referred to each other. Sorry, they referred to each other in their character names. And I'm like, dude, we're not on stage. You
What was
know,
your character name?
it was. I didn't have one yet. It was like
You didn't get to that point.
it was like Dungeons and Dragons, but you don't put the game away. You're still in character. You know, that's what was thing was odd to me like that. And so anyway, so we rehearsed for like that for 4 months, and then one day I says to them, "When are we gonna get a singer and maybe do some live gigs?" And they both like looked at me like deer in the headlights. And I said, "What do you mean do gigs?" I said, "Well, you're gonna play out, right? I mean, you're just rehearsing this for the sake of rehearsing." And the guitar player Bill goes, "No," he goes, "We're not. This is not going to be a live band. We're going to be like, this is a recording project." It was as if, to me, the interpretation I got, my gut feeling was the concept of live terrified him. I could be wrong, but that's the impression I got. The shock value that I got from him when I said play live.
What was the point of the names and everything, though? That's so weird.
I don't know. Well, it was the band was Warlord. I would take, like I did with W.A.S.P, I would take a little flare pen, a little marker, and I draw up kind of like really kind of what I call medieval heavy metal type logos and stuff. So I start, with those little points on the ends of the letters, things like that, and embellishments and so forth.
Sure.
And I drew up a little Warlord logo, and I made little stickers, and I was put these around all over the place. I'm kind of getting into it. I'm an artist. That's what I do on the side. I'm into the graphic arts part of it as well, and design and like that. So it just freaked them out. And they said, "Well, we're not going to be doing live." I said, "Why didn't you tell me that 4 months ago?" I said, I enjoyed playing with you guys. I learned a lot, but I'm a live player. I live live rock. I deliver it on stage. Yeah, you do your homework at home rehearsing, but then you have to present this to an audience.
Exactly.
And to me, the concept of that frightened them. At least that's the impression I took. And like that. So I packed up my bass. I said, "Guys, thanks, but no thanks. This ain't going to work." And I left. Now, years later, they put out an EP, CD, whatever of their stuff, and they had a booklet with all this, liner notes and somebody brought to my attention they had made some unkind, disparaging remarks about me, and that I was just a very simple bass player, and my playing style was suited better for bands like Steeler and Sin. And I found that disparaging. That wasn't necessary.
Right.
You could have just said, "Well, we had Rik Fox with us, and then for several months, and then he went his way and he went ours." But to go to the point of actually putting that in, well, okay, so it wasn't necessary, and unfortunately, the guitarist Bill passed away some years ago, and he was a big figure, rock and roll cult figure in Greece, his home turf, and so their CD sold a lot in Greece. But outside of that, it was just, it just rubbed me the wrong way to see that he would go to that level. And put down the other bands like that.
Right. Yeah, it's weird.
Because obviously, again, I said I played them for 4 months. So it couldn't have been that bad. But when I found in Los Angeles, when somebody leaves a band or there's an exit by a member or whatever, to save face, which is a really important concept, and this is big in Asian culture, especially China and Japan, saving face, you don't want to have to be embarrassed about what you've done.
Yeah.
So, in Japan, you commit suicide, seppuku, but in Los Angeles, they make up stories or they embellish, exaggerate, things about why you left the band. Like Blackie would blame member exits on drugs and drinking. In some cases, it's true. In my case, it wasn't. I wasn't a partier like that on a consistent basis. I'd have an occasional drink, but I mean, I got drunk once while I was in the band. I got sick, and that was it. But there was no fabrications of me being out of band because of a substance abuse like that.
Right.
But in LA, the bands,
and we lost Rick. Where did you go, Rick? Let's give him a few minutes. Let me shoot him a message on Facebook. Maybe his internet dropped or something. I don't know. Interesting stories. I can't, and it's the truth though. When you have situations like this, um, where you have the story, like we're talking about the story of Steeler, but here he comes. You have to go. There's so much to it. Like, so what I was saying, Rick, was when you have a story like we're talking about the Steeler, you have so much you have to go and travel through to get the true background of everything that and piece it all together. So go ahead, continue.
So
I'm sorry.
So the thing with LA is if the remaining band members will then make a cover story about why the other guy left, and they say, well, we kicked him out because he sucks. That's the big one. The main one is because the guy sucks. He can't play. And I had that stigma follow me around, which is really stupid because when I had Sin and Steeler and Sin, both lineups of Sin, I'm out on the boards pounding it out there live. You can see the guy can fucking play.
Right.
So that he can't play stigma doesn't really work. It doesn't sell. It may be in social media because you can't prove it right away, so people will gossip and rumor like that. But anyway, so they make up stories about why you're out of the band like that. Anyway, that's what I did between W.A.S.P and Steeler. So
okay,
I was just, like I said, networking, trying to play with somebody, jam with somebody. If it's kind of music I kind of find interesting and they want me to stay, then I'll stay and I'll play with them and see where it goes. That's kind of how the game goes. And that was that. So that's what I did up until Steeler. And like I said, December 28th, 1982 was when Ron said, you officially are in the band. And so I was in the band at that point.
So it was still just the three of you at that point.
Right.
Wow.
Now Ron had already been in contact with Mike Varney from Shrapnel Records.
Okay.
They already been having conversations about guitar players, and Ron said to Mike, we prophetically, Ron goes, we need the guitar player from hell. Not realizing that's exactly what we got. But I sat in with Mark and on a three-way phone conference call with Mike Varney up north in California, us in Los Angeles, and Yngwie in Sweden. Because we heard
he was still in Sweden at that time.
Yeah, we heard the demo, we heard the guitar playing. We're like, wow, it's the only thing we could assign this to that's vaguely similar is Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
Because at that time, except for Eddie and maybe George Lynch, there was nobody else doing hammer-ons and sweeping arpeggios and all of the histrionics on a guitar. So that was the only. And so here we are in Malmsteen. Oh, there's a guy from Europe that's doing this. Okay.
And how old was he at the time? Was he like 17, 18 years old?
I remember him as 19.
Wow. Okay.
And like that, he had apparently did everything he could do at that point in the business in Sweden and hit a wall. I think he had some record deal with CBS in Sweden. And I mean, this is the country that gave us ABBA. So he ain't going to get past ABBA at this point, Yeah, he was still too much of an unknown and a cult figure. And I guess he was sending his demos out around the world because he was building cult followings in various sectors of the planet like that. So anyway, an arrangement was made to fly him to Los Angeles. And we all went to go pick him up at the airport. Now on the phone, he was this, gung-ho, highly motivated, hard-charging, guy. I want to come to LA. I want to play with your band and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, that's impressive. Like that. And then he gets off the plane and it's the hair flip and the attitude and the Viking has landed, kind of a thing. So, and he's got his leather jacket on and his high heel boots and various occult type jewelry. pentagrams. And I mean, I went through that too with the pentagrams and scary. I mean, I used to wear rings with eyeballs in them because I copied what Gene Simmons was doing. I had both hands at one point, all with different eyeball rings, and freaked people out. So I guess that was where he was. He wanted to freak us out or something. He was into paranormal and UFOs and witchcraft and all that stuff. Okay, and then so much like myself, we walk into the Steeler Mansion, as I already explained. You know what it looks like. Now here's a guy coming from Sweden, which is a different lifestyle, and of course the government takes care of everything. It's a socialist setup, and he walks in and his jaw just dropped. He's like looking around, going, "The hell did I just walk into?" Absolute culture shock, and I think he was probably a little. It scared him back a little. Took his attitude notch down a couple of steps. Seeing that we lived in a very Spartan lifestyle there. It was just not a rock star palace. This was not a mansion. This is LA, baby. Get used to it. So we get to a point to where it's time to plug the guitars in like that, And I don't remember now if he had already had a tape to learn some of our stuff. That might have turned him off, though, considering when you look back retroactively. We plugged in and we started going over the Steelers songs. And we were a day or so of that. If I recall correctly, Ron might be able to have a little more clarification on the details of that. But I do remember we're rehearsing one night and we stop in between the songs. And Ingve says to Ron, "Hey, man, can you do something like cool with these songs or something, man? Because they're really quite fucking boring. Can you make them like more fucking interesting?" And that was just like dead silence in the room. I look up at the drum riser at Mark. Mark's like looking up at the ceiling. And I'm like, then he looks at me and he's like, and I'm like, Did new guy just say what we thought he said? Did he just insult the boss's material? That's how I put it. And if you know what a slow burn is, they do that in the movies when your face turns red because you're like fucking shocked and angry. Ron did the fastest slow burn you ever saw. And Ron goes, "Okay, fine." Next day, Ron was making phone calls. And we started auditioning other guitar players while Ingve was there living with us. So there's that.
Wow.
And they were nowhere near his class of playing. Nowhere near. I mean, the guys didn't absolutely suck, but they were just not in his wheelhouse, And we did this for several days. 2, 3, 4 days, just auditioning other guitar players. Why we didn't audition Bitch Perry, I have no idea, because Mark knew him at the time. And that didn't come until later. So it got to a point where Ingve was just sitting around watching this go on. I guess he assessed his situation and said, "Okay, let's play the game. Let's do this. Stop auditioning other guitar players. I'll do the gig with you." And he plugged back in, and we rehearsed like a machine. Again, since Mark and I had already gotten tight, and tight with Ron, so it was just a matter of Ingve putting his finishing touches, if you want to call it that, over the material. And of course, every spare space in the song that did not have lead guitar was now filled with lead guitar. Noodling. It was like, intro, verse, noodling, chorus, noodling, solo, noodling. Added this solo, chorus, noodling, verse, like that. And that's essentially what it became. So we did that. It's Ingve, and as I look back, Ingve landed. Excuse me. Landed in L.A. probably a year. I don't know that to the day. I arrived on February 4th, 82. Ingve arrived in the first week of February in 83. That's a Twilight Zone thing right there.
Wow.
Um, so he came in February, first week of February, and before even the second week, by about the second week of February, we were told that we got a gig already. Once Ingve was established, he was back. He was in the band. We had a gig on March 11th, so we had to get to stepping and put this together fast. And it was like rehearse every day, several times a day. It was like a rehearsing machine,
Right.
And the pressure was on. The heat was on.
And Rick, a sad thing is, I actually have to cut this short because I'm getting text right now. My fiance is broken down in our car. I had to. Gotta love live interviews. So we got to. I'm so sorry. I got to help her get situated.
Hey, shit happens. Family first.
Yeah, we got to. All right, so we got to redo this. Let's redo. All right, we'll talk all fair. Let me catch up with you later on today and get her situated.
All right.
But yeah, I want to get into, like, I'm so freaking intrigued by all this. Let's get back into this. I'm sorry. Everybody, I'm sorry. It's damn it.
You got to do it.
Yeah,
family first.
Exactly. All right, Rick, thank you.
I'll be here.
Yeah, everybody, believe me, we're going to come back with this. There's way too much to discuss. Rick, thank you for understanding and being cool. And next week we're going to get this set up.
Okie dokie.
All right, I'll talk to you.